there are plans to spend millions of pounds to try and make a roundabout in Norwich safer. Since 2011, there have been more than 30 crashes on the Heartsease roundabout, leaving 15 cyclists and 8 pedestrians injured. The City and County Council have been given almost £4.5 million to change it. But not everyone is happy with the plans, as our political reporter Paul Mosley has been finding out.
Well, this is one of the busiest junctions in Norwich. You have traffic coming from 5 directions. I'm standing next to one of the pedestrian crossings here, but you can't use a pedestrian crossing to get across each part of the road surrounding the Heartsease roundabout. Under the plans that have been drawn up, new crossings will be in place, and the idea is also to slow traffic down as well coming here. The thinking being that will make it safer for everyone to use. But there are concerns about these plans. Peter Silburn is the chairman of the Norwich Cycling Campaign. Peter, just tell me, how would you describe this roundabout as it currently is? What's it like to use?
Well, as you can see, it's absolutely horrendous if you're walking or cycling. There's no provision for there's no cycle lanes at all. Would you want your 8-year-old child or your 80-year-old grandparent to cycle here? I'm not sure I'd want to cycle myself. So this is why the council bid for some money to improve this junction, which it desperately needs. Now they bid for some money from something called the Transforming Cities Fund. They got quite a lot of money to potentially build a really good scheme, such as a Dutch-style roundabout. There is one in Cambridge, the first in the UK, and it's a really good design. It gives priority to pedestrians and cyclists and slows down car drivers on the approach. It's a proven safe design and is well known to increase the number of cyclists. The scheme in Cambridge that went in, I think, 3 years ago, since that went in, the number of cyclists on that junction have increased by 50%. And that's quite extraordinary.
So for people not familiar with a Dutch-style roundabout, how does it actually work?
Well, if you haven't seen one before, it does look a little strange, but it is really simple in principle. It gives priority to people walking and cycling. So you have a ring around the inside, a cycle track, usually in a sort of different colour tarmac. You then, outside that, you have zebra crossings for a pedestrian route around the outside. And the whole design is designed to slow down car traffic approaching it, sort of narrow the entrances, tighten the geometry and reduce the speed limit. So rather than a typical UK roundabout where you have this wide splayed entrance and you zoom round, on a Dutch-style roundabout you slow traffic down, you break down the tasks that you have to do. So first of all, you give way to pedestrians on a zebra crossing, then you give way to cyclists on the cycle track, and then you finally enter the roundabout and obviously give way to drivers on the roundabout, and then you go around the roundabout, and on the exit you sort of do the same thing in reverse. So it's quite a simple principle, really.
The council did look at that as a possibility. It said that if that was put in place, it would slow everything down. Traffic would be slower, buses would be slower. Obviously, buses are an important part of getting people out of their cars. So it did seem there were flaws with that idea.
Well, that's interesting because they got this money from something called the Transforming Cities Fund, and the bid they put in was for improving conditions for cycling and walking. They didn't bid for improving things for car drivers. So it's interesting that the primary reason they're saying for not doing this type of junction is that it would, inconvenience drivers, which is interesting. I think there's a lack of ambition from the council here. We are in a climate crisis. We do need to be reducing the amount of cars on the roads. Car traffic is the largest single cause of carbon emissions. We do need to be reducing the amount of cars on the road, and we need to do that somehow. And one of the ways of doing it is by enabling more people to walk and cycle. And you do that by building the infrastructure, like a Dutch-style roundabout here, that would enable people to do that.
You mentioned that you went to Cambridge and tried out the Dutch-style roundabout there. How did that go?
Well, that was quite interesting. So last week, the cycling campaign organised a study tour to Cambridge, where we invited city and county councillors along to see for themselves this Dutch-style roundabout on Fendon Road in Cambridge. It's the first in the UK, indeed still the only one. I think everyone who experienced it was very impressed. You couldn't fail but to be impressed. It's it just feels a very safe, calm environment, unlike what we're experiencing here. it is the sort of situation where you'd be happy for your 8-year-old child to go around. While we were there, we were seeing families and school kids, on their own cycling around the roundabout. Now, you wouldn't imagine that here, so quite transformative. So again, it comes down, the clue's in the name. They got money from something called the Transforming Cities Fund, not the Slightly Improving Things a Bit Fund, which is what we're probably going to end up with. I mean, the junction that we'll see will be, slight improvement, but, we could have got the real thing, whereas what we're getting is a sort of pale imitation that's, as I say, slightly improvement, but not transformative, which is what it should be.
That's Peter Silburn there from the Norwich Cycling Campaign speaking to Paul Mosley. City and county councillors were due to discuss the plans for the Heartsease roundabout at a meeting yesterday, but it was stopped because of a row over whether the meeting had the right chairman. It's expected that plans will be discussed in July instead.